It's time.
And we're off. May
it's not
2nd.
a figment of your imagination.
It's not a figment of your imagination. We are here. We are ready to rock and continue this conversation. How was the 1st of May for you guys?
Welcome back to another Nudelberg Daily Huddle. And the 1st of May was great. It was a great start to the week, a great start to the month. Got aligned with projects and got, very task oriented, if you will, created ownership for everybody. And there's going to be some great stuff that we're talking about at the end of the week, just continuing to iterate on how people have availability to us and the way they're able to consume our content. So just excited about what's happening and the way the month has started, and can't wait to see where it goes.
I second that, or as we take away from the board meeting, I concur.
I concur.
I concur. It was the way to shut people down. It's like, all right, I concur. Don't need all the follow-up. Lori, the same?
Same. Actually, I took a PTO part of the day and worked on my book. So that was a good way to start May because I really wanted to move that along.
Excellent. A couple of shout outs. Another board member, Ross Calvert, is in the house this morning. Way to go, Ross. Really enjoyed spending quality time with you, seeing you, meeting your wife, seeing your family. Great stuff. Tim Anderson is here from the West.
5 a.m. baby. 4:58. He's in the house. So I love that.
Good stuff. Welcome everybody as they pour in. A couple of things that you might want to know about. We've talked about Ed Bastian, who is the CEO of Delta. We had a great show after we were invited to that virtual meeting with him. I was super impressed with him, super impressed with everything he did. Everybody else noticed he won an award yesterday. He is Chief Executive's CEO of the Year. So interesting stuff. If you want, and Mark, this might be an opportunity, the notes that we took from that, that could be a driver. If people want it, you can figure out how they get it. So
I don't know when that was last year, but he did Chief Executive's event. They did a virtual event. He was like the keynote speaker of that event, and he did a phenomenal job and just gave away so much really good information. We did a whole show on it after that.
Yeah, it was.
I would love to hear why they selected him, right, as the CEO of the year. Like, why did he stand out? Like, I'd love to.
Well, if I share the interview with you, I think it's very clear. That guy steered them through a complete shitstorm with his first goal was to take care of Delta employees.
Yeah.
And it really was very enlightening. And anyway, and then Melissa Graves says
the pilots are on strike and walking out.
You can't please everybody. Right?
On a more somber note, just for me and Lori, Gordon Lightfoot died yesterday.
Yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot was 84. Shay, give me a little taste of Gordon Lightfoot so that people know who it was.
What tale my thoughts could tell, just like an old time movie about a ghost from a wishing well.
So that's memorable music. I mean,
classic, yeah.
the guy, right? Classic. I mean, that's just.
I think Mark is looking at both of us going, yeah.
Doesn't make it into my classic list, right. And I think that's just. It dates just before any music that I'm really into. I mean, it sounded very nice. I'm not knocking the actual music itself, but I don't know that I would classify.
I mean, listen, it's not on my top 10, but it is a classic from that time. Right.
There you go.
I mean, there's a lot of people like that who, when you hear it, you like it, but it's not your go-to pick. So
I get in these conversations all the time with Jake and Aiden because there is a recency bias, or there's just, really good players from certain eras that might not crack the top 50 all time or be an all-time great, but they were really good in that window when they were there. Even if it was
a classic example of that is Tony Rich Project. Doesn't show up anywhere, but that's some badass music. So, anyway, we got a great show. We are continuing the dialogue about board involvements, why, who, where, all that kind of stuff. So, Shay, wake us up, and then we're going right to motivational music. We can break. I want to set it up, but I'm just giving you a clue. So, wake us up.
Wake up, everybody.
No surprise.
No
Shell knows Tony Rich
and Melissa, and I think we just actually uncovered a commonality for them that they didn't even really know about each other. That they both appreciate the Tony Rich project.
It's outstanding music. So, so I picked a song today, which I think represents why CEOs want to have a board and why the board wants to be involved with the CEO. Shay, give me the Spinners.
My music, okay.
I was just about to say that might be a top 5 song for me.
Definitely.
To me,
heaven must be missing an angel. Okay, now we're
well. So to me, if you play that song and people don't react to it, I want
get out.
To leave the room.
Get away from me. Get away from me.
I was jamming.
Energy vampire warning. Here it is.
Right.
This is great. So the point of it all is, when Lori needs somebody, we're around. I mean, it's how I built the coaching practice. I say to people, and this is what I think separates our coaching practice from everything else, on demand. We're around. To think that you can do it any other way, I think is ludicrous. So, Lori, it's your show. Jump in, do your thing. Well, get some of the questions and let's go.
Yeah, do you want me to direct you, Lori? Because I'd love to.
Go.
A question that I would like to have answered is, and I don't think it's the same for every organization, how is the board structured? Like my dad said, he's, on the executive board revenue activity committee. Mm-hmm. So is that unique to JA, and in general, how are boards structured?
So you have, so we have 70 board members, as Dad mentioned yesterday. And then it's a committee structure. So we've set it up so that there's a succession plan for each committee as well. So you have your officers, your chair, your vice chair, your secretary, your treasurer. Some people have 2 vice chairs, right? So you can play around with the structure of your officers. And then you have your executive committee. How we have it set up is that the executive committee is made up of the chairs of each of the different board committees. So you have governance, you have finance. So the finance chair is typically also the treasurer, right? So they're the same. We have the programs committee, which is everything to do with our programs. We have a technology committee we just started because we know we've got to use technology and we need that expertise. And we've got the revenue advisory committee. And some boards have a development committee. I'm of the belief that everybody on the board is on the development committee. Okay. So when you say, oh, do you want to be on the development committee? Guess what everybody's answer is?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
They think they have to raise money, right?
You want to ask for money, man? No.
So I did away with development committees a long time ago, but the revenue advisory committee is about really igniting, right, the board members to be the best ambassadors they can be. It's not totally focused on that committee is not necessarily the only ones raising money. And then for us, the Revenue Advisory Committee will also include ideas around social enterprise and developing an earned revenue stream. And then there are others, like we have an attorney who's our counsel, right? But it can be structured anyway. I've got members at large. Why? Because they've been with us a long time. They have the history of the organization. And they're just great advisors, right? Yep. John Ray, who's been with us for years, Jeffrey Horst from Deloitte. These are people who know the organization, have been through a lot of things with it. So I feel like, so we call them members at large.
Okay.
Everybody thinks the board meeting, right, is where the business happens. That's where we do some updates, and that's where we have the board, has a chance to get together. We look at financials, we vote in new board members, all of that. But where the rubber really hits the road and where you really build the relationships is at the committee level. That's where you're solving the problems, right? We just don't have enough time in a board meeting every other month to solve the problems. So in the off month, there's the committee meeting. That's where it's smaller. That's where you really get to know each other and get to really bounce around ideas and solve the problem.
All of the committees meet individually then.
Yes.
So I work directly with Adrina, who is their CRO. She's the chief revenue officer. She made a presentation at the retreat. I went over her presentation with her prior to, so I was her testing ground. What do you think? What will the board, how do you think the board will react? How does this play? Am I being clear? All that kind of stuff, which was great. But, it's interesting because she pointed out to me that most of the committees are there to validate the work that the JA team is doing.
Right.
So they're not really doing anything. They're just approving and making suggestions. The Revenue Advisory Committee, you got to do something. And I'm having a hard time getting members on my because the main goal is to really address how do we put JA and make it a household name. So it's a very challenging position. Helen and I talk about it all the time in terms of why do I do it as a board member? I don't have to. I could just donate. I could just go to the events. Why do I do it? Because for me, the sense of value that I get when I get in front of the kids, and I'm so bummed because of the rain.
I know.
I was going to be MC of the Shark.
Next year we'll bring you in. I think, and then by the way, the chairs of each of those committees, but the committee, like the program committee, we deal with a volunteer shortage, right? Especially coming out of COVID. Their job is to help Shanette, who's the chief program officer, deal with any problems. Where are we going, right? Looking at all of our programs, where we're having challenges, how can they help bring resources to the table or come up with solutions? And then how do they at the board meeting get the rest of the board going, right? So they bring to the board and say, okay, programs committee is bringing you this. We need this. We need you to engage in
So is it really the committee chair that's responsible for working with the internal person that committee is responsible for in order to be addressing the right problems and ensure that there's actually something being done between the two? Just something that's there that isn't really serving it.
Let me give you a real example. So in some of the ideation, we came up with, hey, if you're a board member and you don't have it listed on your LinkedIn, you're hurting all of us. Right. We need you to wear that as a badge. Now, there is a pin that I wear when we go out where people go, what's that? Oh, it's JA, boom, And so, this education, or Lori was fantastic in the meeting because everybody was circling around and she goes, what is it called, Steve? Awareness.
Yeah, somebody said awareness, and I go, Steve, can you tell us the triangle for awareness? But I think we did a self-evaluation at the retreat. Mm-hmm. We talked about, because we had a lot of new board members within the last 6 to 8 months, and so we did an exercise where each board member evaluated themselves. We collected it. They did not put their names on it, just so that we could give them, a collective score. Yeah. It was 5 questions for them to rate themselves, and there was a total of 12 that you could get. When was the last time you had a conversation about JA? Is it on your LinkedIn profile, right? Whatever it might be. Well, are you sharing and posting? So Revenue Advisory Committee also is a lot about marketing. How do we get the word out there, right? Yep. But I do want to make an interesting point, because I think there might be some people on the huddle. Only 2% of board members are under 30 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's it. Yeah.
I just want to point that out, because what tends to happen
this conversation just took a left turn.
Sorry. But I think it's really important, because this is where our young people, you may not be able to do the give get on the board, right? There might be some restrictions for you. Sure. But it's a give get. So if you know people, or you can bring your company in, you can still meet that.
So let me explain that. So it's a commitment to raise the funds. You don't have to pay it yourself. Very much like when Jake played football and would come home and, hey, I got to sell this paper, this wrapping paper. I bought it all, and then he covered his commitment. It's really the same kind of thing. Is that if you want to be involved, there is a way to get the funds if you're willing to work your network, which is the power of all of this. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
And so there are lots of ways for younger people to get involved, right? Those professionals starting their careers. For us, we have not created a separate young professionals board. Some people do that. Yes. But I also, I caution nonprofits, because you want to be careful how right? It takes a lot to manage it. But we do have the Circle of Wise Women, and what's happening with them, the affinity groups, is we now have a membership, right? Just a 1-year membership, so you don't have to pay the lifetime membership. We're getting those younger business professionals. The league, if you look at the league membership, it's probably 50-50. There's about 50% that are under 30, 35. And then there's the ones that are supporting it, right? So get involved in some way with a young professionals group or an affinity group, because that can then lead you onto the board when you're ready.
I know if it was me as a young person, I know what I would do. I would go directly to you and I would say, hey, Lori, I saw you on the huddle. You do such a great job. The message of JA resonates with me. I'm 25 years old. I'm new to the market. I'd love to be involved somehow, some way. Would you answer that message?
Of course I would.
So hold on. Zach Corliss did it.
Right.
We're scheduled to talk. We already have a date.
Right.
He asked us for direction. We said, this is how you make your way in the community, where people know who you are and what you're capable of doing. And Lori immediately said, who is this guy, Zach Corliss?
Right.
And usually sponsored by somebody. And so the young people who have gotten involved in the league, and Casey has done a great job of shepherding people through the first entry. It's almost like, let's get to first base. Let's see what it's like. The cigar dinner, the cigar event we did last year was just pure fun. There was no real agenda. There were people there like me who have been.
Well, the agenda was to raise money, but
right. Well, so that's
and have fun.
That's a backdrop.
Yes.
All nonprofits, which like everybody has an ask at some point. So, I have a problem when people ask without earning the right to do it, which is
Right.
what most salespeople do. We call
Right.
them ask holes,
Right.
So, don't ask until you earn the right. You know what? The league earns you the right to say, hey, what'd you think of that group? What'd you hear? What, got you started? My conversations that night were all about why I'm involved. I love the opportunity to get in front of the kids and their parents. There were some parents who still are in touch with me who hugged me after and they said, nobody's talking to the kids like you just talked to them. Mark did the same thing.
So when I first moved back down here, I wouldn't necessarily, I was young, but I was 32, and I got involved in a nonprofit's young leaders group. And it was a real miss for me because what I was looking for in that group was other young leaders. I mean, you got to own that word to be a leader. You got to be somebody who's hungry, who's driven, who's on a mission to do something. And there should be some kind of impact being created with that group. And in my opinion, that group should then have access to the board, to the executive board members, to the mentorship of whatever that organization is, because that's what I was looking for. I was looking for not only to build a community of peers that were like-minded like me, that were trying to be the next generation of leaders, but I also wanted to be able to learn from the people who had already done it. That was not what that was at all. I mean, every event we would come together and everybody was basically, giving their elevator pitch. It was like speed dating for everybody in the room. And it was a real miss for me.
I think that's why I love the concept of the league and the Circle of Wise Women, right? It's an opportunity, an affordable opportunity. I mean, look, even our 30-year-old professionals can afford $80 a month.
Right.
Okay. Give up a couple of Starbucks and you're done. Right.
So it's always
or a
about
couple nights out on Las Olas, right?
Right. But what I love about this model versus a young professionals is exactly what you just said. Yes. As a young professional, I didn't just want to be with young professionals.
Right.
So with the Circle of Wise Women and with the league, right? You haven't been to it, I don't think, Mark, but we do a mentoring event with the league. You got members who have been in business for 30 years, and you got the younger professionals, right? They're all there. It's a networking breakfast, and then they go and they mentor with the students, right? And they're mixed together.
Right.
So they're getting an opportunity to meet each other, to meet more experienced leaders, and then also to give back and actually be with the kids. But I want to make a point of this because this is really important.
And we'll go to overtime.
Crushing it 2 days.
I love when I get overtime. I'm so competitive. So when I was in nonprofit, when I first got into nonprofit, I was a stay-at-home mom. Right. I had volunteered as a younger person in business and all that, but I chose to stay home with my kids. But I knew I had to do something right or my brain would blow up. And so I got very, very involved in nonprofits, planning events. Then I got on councils, got appointed by the governor, right? All different kinds of committees and groups, local and state, because I knew I wanted to always change the lives of children and families, right? Those relationships that I built on those committees, which were non-paying committees. And by the way, I sit on 3 of those now and chair 2. Like I have time. No, I really don't, but it's important to me. And that work is still important to me. And that I get some of it through JA, but I also want to be involved with some other things. The relationships I built on those boards when I went into nonprofit as a professional after my divorce, let me tell you, if it was not for that, I don't know how I would have been successful because I was a VP. I went in as a development person.
Right.
I had relationships with the Marty Heisingas and the people, right? I could give you a list of people, the people in this community who were respected leaders, right? I was able to sit on boards with them. They got to know me. They saw that my word meant. If I said I was going to do something, I did it. If I said I was going to show up, I showed up. Yep. They saw my passion. I remember, I'll never forget, I joined the Children's Service Council, got appointed. And this one guy was an older guy. much older than me at the time, said somebody recommended me to be on the finance committee. And he was like, well, what does she know about finance? And I looked at him and I said, well, I was a CFO in my corporate life. And he goes, oh, right.
Yeah.
That was an example of how I never wanted to treat someone, right?
Right.
But if you get nothing else from it, first of all, find what you're passionate about. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Number two, you have the opportunity to build your credibility, your reputation, and build the best relationships than any networking event you could ever go to. Ever.
I don't think that it could be said any better. I mean, to me, if you're involved in the right organization, that was my only caveat to Zach, was like, whatever you're going to get involved in, you better be passionate about it, because they're going to ask you to take your free time to use it. So if you don't really like it, you're not going to be motivated to actually be involved and show up the way you need to. But ultimately, the thing you get from it, aside from the feeling of helping, is relationships, which we talk about all the time, is the number one indicator for the success of your life, right? And then all of the information and education that you get, not only from mentors, but from your peers. So Ross had a great comment about that. You know, he's been involved for the past 8 months and it's been life-changing. So really great stuff. Great.
I just want to throw out an idea that we can noodle, if you will. Going to JA and physically visiting the building is a game-changing event. Maybe we can commit to do one of our Monday huddles live and invite people from the huddle, from the area, to come and join us for a live huddle, which would be really, cool. Really cool. So, Sarah,
we will treat to breakfast. And by the way, if
Sarah, add that to the action list.
If you're on the huddle, check out the league. Check out the Circle of Wise Women. Our annual meeting is coming up for the Circle of Wise Women. So many ways to get involved. If you've never been involved with anything, get on an event committee. Start with that, right? Because that's not a long-term commitment. It's a short, right, one-time thing.
And the best way to get on an event committee is just find somebody in the organization that you have a commonality with. Reach out to them. Say you want to get involved. And it's as easy as that. Have a conversation.
All right, we'll discuss it. I really look forward to doing that and seeing some of the faces of the people who are in the huddle live at JA BizTown. It'll be fantastic. Lori, thank you for spending 2 mornings with us. We are grateful. We are blessed. Now it's time to get down to business. Let's go. May 2nd. Let's roll.
Please don't worry about me. I'm about to let my heart speak. Friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business.